Well, hi, pilgrims. It's Pastor Eric again. I'm so glad to see you and to be with you here on site and walk around the neighborhood and all that stuff. But I wanted to get to our pastor's questions. I know we're a day late, so get back to the sermon if you haven't heard it. Also, go back and read the passage. 2 Samuel 1 is a quick read. And it does include a large chunk of poetry, but we love that because poetry is so intense and musical and evocative and all those good things. Here are some of the questions I wanted to ask based on our time together on Sunday. We'll do this week to week. First, what's one new thing you learned about God from Sunday's time in the Word? Just one new thing you learned about God. Second, what's the thing in our reading that's hardest for you to believe about God? What's the thing that's hardest for you to believe about God? And there's a few that were tough, I have to admit. 3, I want you to read the last chapter of 1 Samuel. I recommended it in the sermon, but go back and read that last chapter of 1 Samuel, right where the scribes divided the scrolls because, well, scrolls could only be so big. You'll notice right away that the way Saul dies there is different than what's recorded in 2 Samuel 1. So my question to you is, what does that mean? For many, it means that the Bible writers dropped the ball again and can't be trusted to tell the truth. But there's a lot of ways to read them as just different accounts of the same terrible story. So instead of suspecting the Bible writer, how might you read those two different accounts? That's number 3. 4, you noticed that I didn't encourage you, be like David. Be like David. He's a good person. Do you know why, though? It's very tempting. It sounds lame. It sounds kind of thin and thoughtless, but it's very tempting to do. The reason is because David is not the central figure in the scriptures. David's God is. I called you to be like David's God and our God. But there are ways to imitate David's stunning moves here in 2 Samuel chapter 1, and we'll talk about this the rest of the book as well. Besides the one I mentioned, actively listening to the voice of his God, what other words or deeds of David strike you as Christ-like? Think about it. Number 5. Over the past 30 years, many scholars of the Old Testament have decided that David's reference to the love of Jonathan toward David, means that David and Jonathan were gay lovers. Now, why does that view do an injustice to the story? Could you explain that calmly and kindly to your friends who find no fault with a gay lifestyle? Be patient, be sensitive, be thoughtful, but let's make sure we say exactly what the scriptures say and no more. Number 6, someone sang recently, "We could never be royals, royals." I'm sure you've heard the song, but I think that anyone who knows and believes the gospel of Jesus Christ are sons and daughters of the King. You're part of heaven's royal family. How will you let that speak back to the voices of shame and condemnation and efforts to over-control your life and keep free of all possible pain and suffering? If you're sons and daughters of the King, how does that speak back to those other voices I mentioned? 7, what needs lament in your life? What needs stopping and being sad? What needs lament in our city? Who will write the songs, the poetry, or paint the paintings, or create the monuments that will help us faithfully remember the losses that we carry by God's providence? That's my question about lament for you. You've heard sung in 2 Samuel chapter 1, a beautiful lament. This is the way God calls us to respond to what God allows, sadly, into our lives. That's all the questions I've got for this week. We'll share more another time. Thanks for listening. Bye.